Fewer staff and interrupted supply chains. The British are now feeling what Brexit really means. It still divides society today, but more and more people are realizing the scope of the exit. January 31st in 2020 was not a good day for the blue flag with the yellow stars. In Parliament Square in London, some bitter British opponents of the European Union trampled on it while others mourned at home. In the EU Parliament they sang Auld Lang Syne and let the British go. It's been 2 years since Great Britain left the EU. Its people more divided than ever before. How do the British, whose Prime Minister is fighting for his political survival, think about Brexit 24 months and one trade pact later? Yeah, just one. A stroll through the British capital is what we do in this video now. I wish we were still in the EU, says Carol Christophe from the Surrey Hills, who is strolling across the square at Covent Garden with her husband. Nice area, by the way. She voted against Brexit and worries about her daughters who would like to pursue an international career. Living and working wherever you want is now only possible for Britons with the appropriate visa, and that is expensive and time-consuming. The same goes for EU citizens, many of whom used to come to the UK and work there, just like I did in the past. Today, Christophe notices that there is a search for staff everywhere, whether in gastronomy or retail. Signs are hanging everywhere. This also concerns Amanda Hitchcock, who quickly treats herself to a cigarette on the street in the city of London. The Brit concludes contracts with cleaning and security companies for a larger commercial building, or at least tries to. I can't find any cleaners or security staff with the best will in the world. There's a huge shortage, she says. Hitchcock says her government did not properly implement the exit from the EU. They really got us into trouble with that, she says. She's one of those who stayed at home for the 2016 referendum. I'm pretty impartial, she says. Hitchcock is the exception rather than the rule. If you ask around, the Brits, most have a clear opinion, although in some cases this has changed drastically. Voting for Brexit was the stupidest decision I've ever made. I deeply regret it, admits Sam, who works in London in the cultural sector and does not want to make his full name public for the newspaper that interviewed them. Friends and colleagues he has only met in recent years do not know that he voted to leave in 2016. Sam writes via email that he has not listened to liars like Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage and therefore cannot say he was lied to. Rather, he followed criticism of the EU's agricultural policy or the austerity policy towards Greece and thought, with everything I know, do I want to remain part of it? Well, the young radical in me thought I had to say no and move on to something that is better. Well, but the dream of the better is over. I didn't think about who would be responsible for leaving the EU, how awkward and clownish they would be, how ignorant and uninterested in how the EU actually works, he says. In a survey conducted a few weeks ago by the opinion research institute Opinion, more than 6 out of 10 Britons rated Brexit as negative or worse than expected. According to The Observer, which commissioned the survey, as many as 42% of those who voted to leave the Brexit referendum have a negative opinion. We are now seeing that a significant minority of Leave voters are saying things are going badly, or at least worse than expected, says opinion pollster Adam Drummond. Instead of two hardened fronts of supporters and opponents of Brexit, even the group of Leave voters is now divided. The Brexit transition phase has also been over for a good year, and since then people in Great Britain have been slowly beginning to feel what Brexit really means so far. Fewer staff, less choice of European products, and interrupted supply chains, although the government is keeping a lot hidden behind the pandemic. Even Londoner John Jones, who sees great opportunities in Brexit through trade agreements, has to admit that these have not yet come to fruition. The hope for a trade deal with the USA is a long way off. The deals concluded so far make little difference to the economy. And Jones said about this, Brexit has been blocked by COVID, which I unfortunately have to say no. Nigel Henry, who works for an insurance company in the London Financial Centre, is already satisfied. I think things are going really well and our business is thriving, but more importantly, We are free from the constraints of Europe. Well, he was really happy to be out. But we still have a lot of work to do. Well, at least he admits that one. The government must remove regulations that date back to the EU as soon as possible. Yeah. The Brit is not afraid that the world-renowned London financial sector could be left behind by Amsterdam or Frankfurt. We've never done much profitable business with Europe anyway. Sorry, I have to laugh really loud out about that one. While London is coming to terms with the country's fate in one way or the other, work is already underway in the north to return to the Union. Brexit has damaged Scotland's economy and our open relationship with Europe, writes pro-independent Scotland activist Michael Gray. And the UK government may get away with blaming it on COVID-19 for a while, but eventually the reality will emerge that Brexit will make us poorer and more isolated. Well, Scotland's return to the European Union is considered unlikely as there are hurdles to a referendum and the Scots are quite divided. But if Gray and Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon have their way, their country should vote next year on whether to decouple from the UK. And then they want to be in the EU. But Boris Johnson has learned nothing from all of this to this day. Because of the Partygate affair, opponents of Boris Johnson's party are showing their faces more and more clearly, but time is currently speaking in the British Prime Minister's favour now. With outside expert Tom Tugendhat, I just like the word outside. Foreign expert Tom Tugendhat, a Johnson critic, a well-known Tory, threw his hat in the ring for a successor. Former Brexit Minister David Frost has also been criticising Johnson's course ever louder. However, he has not announced his candidacy. More candidates are expected to explain themselves once the much-anticipated internal inquiry into the Downing Street lockdown party scandal becomes public. A release date is still unknown. However, in all likelihood, the reports by top official Sue Gray will initially only appear in a heavily censored version, as you probably already know. This is related to investigations by the London police. In a statement, the agency asked that minimum reference be made in the Cabinet Office report to the events being investigated by the Metropolitan Police. This is intended to prevent any bias in the investigation. The opposition urged Downing Street to publish the report in full anyway. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey warned that the police were losing trust. The Met Police had refused to investigate the affair for weeks. Now they announced investigations when Gray's report was about to be handed over. Justice experts were amazed at the police request for censorship. The internal investigator Gray describes only facts. She doesn't pull any results out of this. For Johnson, the delay should be quite welcome news now. The police investigation could later only be about whether those involved have to pay fines. This would have significantly weakened the explosive force of both investigations, on which no less than Johnson's political survival depends. A revolt in his faction would also be less likely. Johnson had so far dismissed almost all questions about the parties with reference to the ongoing investigation, and denied any knowledge of lockdown violations, which is the biggest joke in the last years. Government employees and Johnson are said to have disregarded their own rules with celebrations during the pandemic. If this is confirmed, a vote of no confidence in Johnson, for which at least 54 Tory MPs would have to position themselves against him in writing, is likely. Foreign Minister Liz Truss and Finance Minister Rishi Sunak have been the favourites as a successor. So far, both have publicly denied any ambitions. And Johnson's critic Tugendhat told Times Radio that becoming Prime Minister is a huge privilege. You don't have to be embarrassed if you want to serve your country, he said. The Foreign Affairs Committee chairman has served as a soldier in Afghanistan and has repeatedly criticized the hasty withdrawal of British troops from the country. Ex-Brexit Minister Frost criticized the enormous tax increases approved by Johnson. It was expected that the Prime Minister could at least cancel the planned increase in the Social Security contribution in order to placate critics within the party. But Johnson stressed in a joint op-ed with the Treasury Secretary Sunak in the Sunday Times that the 1.25% increase was necessary to clear the enormous backlog of surgeries and fund tens of thousands of new nurses. The fact that Johnson confirmed these plans is a sign that he sees his position much more firmly in place than many others do. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.